always a struggle. But then you hear they say, my asthma not being controlled, my blood pressure not being controlled. And I'm like, because you're taking medications that are not working. You're taking expired medications, you know. So that's one thing. So I definitely spend a lot of time going through my patients, you know, medical history on the first day and the medication list, you know, just to see if there's any new medicines that they're taking. Go through, find out why they're taking it, and try to explain to them the importance of it. So okay, so I almost missed one of my patients. Almost missed one of them because she had moved and the address wasn't updated in the chart properly. And I'd gotten the address yesterday when I spoke with her just to confirm if she was going to be home. And so just put it back in. So the good thing about, you know, so the only downfall to when I confirm my appointments for my patient, depending on how good the office is, sometimes when it comes on to, you know, getting your patients booked and confirmed for an appointment, so it depends on the kind of office. Depending on the office, you know, some persons are short-handed, some persons just get it out of the way, you know. If, so for example, I speak with a patient and I realize that they have, you know, an updated insurance card, I don't have a problem taking a copy of it and sending it to the office. If they've moved, if they've changed numbers, whatever it is, I will still go ahead, get that information, and I'm going to put it in the profile. I'm going to put it in the section that it's supposed to be at. While you have other persons who will do things like, you know, they will definitely just get the number and just pin it as a little note. They're not updating it in the chart appropriately, so that way it benefits everybody, you know. So depending on, you know, how you work or the company that you work with, you'll find out that that is one issue. So for me, because I confirm my own patients, because when I do that, I realize, you know, I make it a little bit more efficient for me in terms of my drive time, you know. So rather than me driving 1 hour, then 30 minutes, then another 45 minutes to go and see patients, because these patients are more off on like maintenance, you know, medications. Not all of them have acute problems going on. I will try to schedule or make my schedule a little bit flexible so I can see the patients and not feeling as though I'm just driving, you know, constantly, and it doesn't make any sense, or I'm not making enough money or my goal for the week in terms of patient count. And so, you know, I tend to find myself doing that. Call to the patients like the day before to confirm if they're going to be home and just to confirm their address, because the one thing you don't want is to drive 30 minutes to an address only to find out that the patient probably had moved a day ago or 3 weeks ago, or, you know, since the last time you saw them. So I try to just make sure I call ahead of time, find out if they have changed location, so that way I can plan properly for the visit. So that is it. So a lot of times if the office doesn't update the chart, you might find out that you'll get a spreadsheet with the patient's information that is incorrect. And if you're not into the habit of calling ahead and confirming, then you might just be the one that, you know, is driving for hours or minutes and you know, realizing that the patient had moved. So yeah. So when I'm doing my visits, a lot of times, you know, I have patients that have been discharged from the hospital that I do see. With those kind of visits, the post-hospital visits, They are a little bit lengthy in terms of my notes, because I try to capture as much as possible in those notes, because you have follow-up that you definitely need. Some of them have specialists that they need to go and see. So I try to capture all of those with their results or tests that they did in the hospital setting. One thing I definitely do is make sure I get their hospital record, because when I request their medical record, I get enough information. As I say, I get all their tests, that they did, lab work, radiological studies, anything like that. I definitely get it, so I definitely get those, so I can build my notes a little bit better. I get it so that way, when it comes on to the plan of care, whatever needs to be followed up with the patient, if they need to see a specific specialist, I'm aware of that, or if they did saw one in the hospital, I'm aware of that. So that way I'm not repeating certain things, and I'm not over testing for these patients. I'm just doing continuity of care. All right. So I definitely call, not me personally call the office, but it's a part of my plan of care for the office to do a medical request for those patients to get their records sent over to us. Another thing is, when it comes on to their medication reconciliation, that is one thing I definitely focus on, because I don't want it to be a case where when I am seeing a patient and their medication is not up to date, or if I'm doing a virtual visit, or if they call to say that they need a medication refill, on this medication itself, I do not have the most accurate medication dosage. A lot of times, we find ourselves going in to see patients, and one thing that is a problem for us, or for me, that is seeing patients with medications that are expired. It's everybody's duty to make sure that these patients are taking the right medications. Sometimes the patients are taking medications that are expired from 2017, and you don't want that, because it's not a good medication. It's not good. It's not going to do anything for the patient. So you definitely want to get those out of the reach of the patients. A lot of times patients tend to get upset when you throw those out, because they're like, oh, it's a medication that I'm using the medication. Doctor say I can use the medication. Yeah, doctor say you can use medication, but the medication is only good for this time period. So they get upset when you throw them out. And for me, I like throwing them out, because I don't want to know that I am treating a patient for something and the patient are taking medications that are expired. They don't have no use. So why the sense of taking it, and your insurance is sending the same medication for 3 months? Why the sense we even have it in, your medication cabinet or your bag? Some patients are good with throwing out stuff and getting the new ones used up. Others, it's always a struggle. It's always a struggle. But then you hear they say, my asthma not being controlled, my blood pressure not being controlled. And I'm like, because you're taking medications that are not working. You're taking expired medications. So that's one thing. So I definitely spend a lot of time going through my patients, medical history on the first day, and the medication list, just to see if there's any new medicines that they're taking. Go through, find out why they're taking it, and try to explain to them the importance of it so they can continue taking it. Because sometimes they might be like, oh, I'm already taking one blood pressure medication. You have to explain to them that, yeah, you're taking one blood pressure but your medication, but your blood pressure is still not controlled. We're giving you a second one that is going to help with your kidneys as well. So definitely, if you explain to them a little bit more, they're a little bit open to taking these medications, I realize, versus if we don't say anything to them and you just order these medications with the expectations that they're gonna just take it. All right, so I definitely go through and do a full detail on their medication reconciliation, so that way it when it's time for me to do any form of order, And if they're the ones that are calling in to say, oh, they need a refill on this prescription because it's not there at the pharmacy, then I can always be like, oh, this is an updated one because I was able to see it when I visited them. So my first visit, post-op visits or post-hospital visits are usually pretty long with these patients, because I try to make sure I go through the reconciliation of their medications and their diagnosis to make sure that everything is good. Another thing I definitely do is, you know, I try to encourage my patients. So a lot of times, you know, they rely heavily on the office. There's some office that assist with referrals. So I definitely encourage them. If you have a cardiologist in mind that you want to see, or if you feel as though there is one that is close by to you, just go ahead and get that information from, you know, from them and have them send it over to us so we can do the referral directly to those providers. Because sometimes, you know, you'll be doing referrals and the patient be like, oh, they don't want to do this, or I don't want to use this one, and you have to go ahead and change it. So, you know, it takes up a lot of time. So always encourage them. If you have a specialist that you want to see specifically, then feel free to go ahead and let us know and we'll send it over to them, so that way they can be a part of our plan, the care. Because a lot of times some patients, they just literally sit down and expect that, you know, I'm supposed to be walking with their, you know, their medications. I'm supposed to come in to medicate them. I'm supposed to go in and, you know, find their wheelchair, you know, cook, clean, change them when I'm there. They don't expect that, you know, they need to be a part of the care. They're not expecting that. And so if you don't explain to them that it's a team approach, you know, you take a portion of the care into your hands and I take a portion in my hand. All right, so I'm going to go in to see this patient, and then I will definitely see you in a few minutes after seeing this patient. So this patient that I'm going to see, she had moved from her location, and so because of that, she never had a working number. She wasn't answering her calls or anything, and so because of that we weren't able to see her. So every time she will go ahead and say, oh, I need a visit, and then by the time we try calling her, she's not answering the phone. So finally able to see her this time around, and well, when it speaks to you. Gonna be able to see her this time around, and then from there we'll see how things are going. All right.